Welcome friends, it is I, your LostScarf, and it's time for the beginner's guide to Ah Muzen Cab, the god of bees, and the reason why I eat Cheerios, because honey's awesome. So this is going to be a beginner guide. If you're advanced or expert, probably not going to be a lot here for you. You probably already know how to do Ah Muzen Cab, but this is for people who don't really have a good idea how to play him. And so we're going to give advice here. We're going to give advice on how to build him in Conquest and in Arena, how to play him in Conquest and Arena, do's and don'ts with him, go over his abilities, about his weaknesses a little bit, and have a conclusion at the end of the whole thing. This is really for beginners to jump in and have some fun with Ah Muzen Cab because he's a pretty sweet god. And as you get better with him, you'll evolve your own playstyle and builds with him, and that'll be great for everybody. So let's get going. So who is Ah Muzen Cab? Well, Ah Muzen Cab is the god of bees. He's also an avid reader of A.A. Milne books, and he's also quite scared of bears. He is the only left-handed hunter, and has one of the safest clears in the game. He has the ability to swarm bees all over his enemies and greatly slow them down to blast them to pieces. If you like staying close to your enemies like some sort of sticky substance, Ah Muzen Cab is your bee. Ah Muzen Cab's abilities. First up is his passive bees. Now this is a damage over time attack that gets started by either honey when it's activated or when you hit an opponent with swarm. Now if you hit enemy minions, it will spread to all the minions around them. If you hit an enemy god, it will spread to other gods. But there is no cross-pollination between minions and gods. It just doesn't happen. His first ability is hives. Now what hives are, they're these structures that Ah Muzen Cab can put up anywhere on the map, and if he's within the area of them, they will give him HP regen, movement speed, and attack speed bonuses, but they can be killed only by basic attacks. Also, they will activate honey if it's within 55 feet of the hives. His second ability is called Swarm. Now this is a piercing skill shot that does a bunch of damage and will cast the bees passive on anyone hit by it, and it also activates any honey on the ground that it passes over. His third ability is called Honey. Now what's interesting about this ability is, as you cast it you can decide where the trail of honey goes, and enemies on top of it are slowed. Now if you hit it with Swarm or hives nearby, it'll activate bees on the honey, and it will do damage to everyone on top of it that is an enemy. So that is pretty useful there. It's also useful as a safe clear if you're under your tower and you can't go far out for Swarm. So you have two forms of clear for Ah Muzen Cab. His ultimate is called Stinger, and what happens here is Ah Muzen Cab throws out his Stinger, it pierces minions, and it will stick to the first god it hits. That god will take damage and will be crippled for 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, the Stinger falls, and Ah Muzen Cab can pick it up within the next 4 seconds to reduce his cooldown by 80%. That's pretty useful there, so you can sting somebody, kill them, and after a dozen seconds you can sting another person and kill them, and so on and so forth. So you're able to just really ramp up the kills very quickly on enemies who could otherwise be able to escape as long as you hit them with a Stinger. Ah Muzen Cab in Conquest. Now for beginners, you gotta be an ADC. Of course, ADC, that's what he is, he's a hunter, he should be for that. Advanced for him, in aggressive ADC, or a solo laner. You can do the solo lane pretty well because of his safe and strong clear, and you can be aggressive with him if you understand him better to do that. Really, for beginners, I feel you should be playing a very passive ADC, farming up as much as possible. You'll be turtling a lot. It isn't the prettiest way to play the game, but late game, you will wreck everyone and everything. That's really what you're doing here is you're storing up the first half of the match to destroy the second half. So that's why we see 2 stack items on the screen here. So you start out with Devo 2, and then eventually get Devo gloves, then you get Boots, Transcendence for the second stack item, Executioner for attack speed, and then 2 crit items for more power. And then the actives you should have are Sprint and something defensive like Beads or Aegis or Combat Blink because you don't have an escape. So what's going on here is Ah Muzen Cab is a really safe clear, so you should be going for Swarm first, and because of that you can build stacks very quickly. So you'll build plenty of lifesteal and power with Devo's gloves, and then some movement with Boots. Then you get Transcendence, which will give you mods so you can cast more often, and you get more power of course with that. Then Executioner, so you can break open opponents with penetration and attack speed. 2 crit items because then you'll hit really hard, and then you'll be off to the races with that. Sprint 3 will be very useful in chasing down and finishing off enemies, and you'll just be a really good powerhouse when you're fully built in this game. Now you could get alternate items like the Witchblade, like say you're dealing with a lot of attack speed, like the jungle, ganker, and the ADC are both very reliant on attack speed, then Witchblade might serve you well. Then there's Titan's Bane if you're dealing with a lot of tankiness on the other team, and then finally there's Quinn Size. If there's not a lot of tankiness, then you can take advantage of that and use the Quinn Size instead of Executioner if you want. Or you just want more attack speed and less crit, you can do that as well. Or you just want to go for 1 stack item, you can do that. But really, this build I feel will serve you very well as a beginner and you'll do right. Now, in the laning phase, which is the first half of the match, you should hide a hive in the blue buff camp. You should hide it there because the enemy cannot basic attack it, and if you go a little bit deeper, you should hide it in the jungle. That way they can't hurt your hives, and you can get all the benefits from it. Now you should be maxing your Swarm first, then your hives, then your honey, and then finally your ultimate whenever possible. Building it this way should work out, because your Swarm is very strong at clearing minion waves. You can very safely clear minion waves and not have to worry about getting hurt too badly from the enemy team. You'll be turtling a lot during the laning phase because you don't have stuns or a root or anything like that to really get a good hit on your opponents. All you have are slows and a cripple. So you're just going to be farming a lot and a lot and a lot. So your support can go and roam to other lanes if they want to, and your jungler doesn't have to gank your lane. You can basically 2v1 very well here, unless the jungler comes over, then it's a 3v1. Then you should just be under your tower, which is totally doable with Ah Muzen Cab, and your opponents will get quite agitated and very annoyed with the fact they can't get you, which will make them cause mistakes for later on in the match. Now in the second half of the match, which is the team fighting phase, you'll be cashing in on all that sweetness you've been gathering. You're going to be very strong because all your stacks will be done. You should be done with Executioner by now, maybe you'll be getting to work on criticals, and you'll be able to just wreck house all over the place. And your ultimate will be very crucial here. You want to land that cripple on enemies who have the means of escape. Hit them with a cripple, slow them down with the honey, and go shoot them to death. If there's a team fight going on, put your hive somewhere outside of it on your team's side of things so that the enemy will have a hard time basic attacking it, and just lay down the fire and hurt your enemies very badly. If enemies have any chance of getting away from you can use Sprint 3 to catch up and finish them off very quickly. Ah Muzen Cab can kill most gods within a couple shots, so that Sprint 3 will guarantee it for the most part unless they jump away because you missed your cripple or it's on cooldown. With your enemies dead, you'll be able to do a lot of work with your basic attack. Your basic attack will shred towers very quickly, you can soul the Gold Fury, and with help you can take out the Fire Giant very fast. This is definitely something you can pull off with Ah Muzen Cab, and if you do all this right, you will cause very good chance of victory for your team. Do's and don'ts with Ah Muzen Cab. First up, you want to put your hive in the blue camp as close to your lane as possible so that you can take advantage of the passes from that, and that'd be great. Another is place a hive at the Titan Fountain, that way you can quickly leave your place. It's not a lot of movement speed, but it is enough to at least get you around a little bit quicker, and you have 6 to play with, so you can definitely have one there. And lastly, you should hide your hives in the jungle if you go further up the lane, so the enemy has a harder time hitting them. Don't put them in the lane, that's just not going to work out. Now for some don'ts. First up is, like I said, don't place hives in easily killed places, like the lane is not a good place to have it. Put it somewhere where it's not obvious for the enemy to find and kill, that way you can utilize it longer. Another is don't waste your mana on honey without swarm or hive. If they're on cooldown, don't do honey yet. Unless you have an enemy who you can slow down and kill right now, don't waste honey on it. Wait until you have other means so you can do damage with the slow. And lastly, don't be aggressive early. Ah Muzen Cab just doesn't have the kit for it, but if your jungler and your support are both with you and they want to get a kill, you might be able to pull it off. But it's just you and the support, maybe not so much. If it's just you, ain't gonna happen. Ah Muzen Cab in Arena. Now the build here is pretty straightforward. Tabi for penetration and speed, Execution for penetration attack speed, Size for power and attack speed, Aussie for lifesteal and attack speed, and then double crit items for power there. Then use active sprint for aggressiveness, and then something defensive like beads or Aegis, or combat blink depending on the situation. Now there's other items you can get like the Witchblade again, or maybe Titan's Bane, or some other items that could be useful depending on the situation. Now I don't recommend Hasteless for you. I think sprint plus Aussie is good enough. You need some lifesteal and that'll work there. You could replace Aussie with Hasteless, but then you don't have any lifesteal, so I really think this is the better way to go about it. Now when you're in Arena, Ah Muzen Cab is pretty straightforward. Hide your hives wherever possible behind structures so they don't get killed, use Swarm to clear waves, Honey to slow down enemies, and Cripple to prevent escapes, and then just beat the ever-loving crap out of people with your basic attack. Farm when you can, shoot gods to death when you can. That's pretty much it with Ah Muzen Cab. Just be smart about where you do everything. When you use your sprint, when you use your honey, when you use your cripple, when you use your shots. As long as you're good about your shots, you have a good chance of killing everyone and winning the game. Weaknesses of Ah Muzen Cab. Now they're pretty straightforward. Sprint can be used to ignore your slow, beads can be used to ignore your cripple, and you just don't have an escape. This is the biggest problem with Ah Muzen Cab, of course, is he doesn't have an effective escape. You can use sprint to get out of there, your slow will slow them down kinda, but they have any gap closing, you'll be in trouble, and you can maybe use a defensive item to get out of there, but really your biggest weakness is you lack an escape, so you gotta play smart about it. Keep your eyes on where your enemies are, don't go too deep, just be smart and you'll do alright. In conclusion, Ah Muzen Cab is a very strong late game god. He has great clear for laning phase, and effective basic attack power once built. He very much is the god of bees. You spend a lot of time building up, and just gathering all that pollen, and just getting really strong, putting yourself in a very sweet position later on in the match. Though he lacks an escape, as long as he's played with good awareness, he can be played very strongly and very well, and can win the game outright for his team. And that should be it for the Ah Muzen Cab guide right there. He's a very straightforward guide, and I think I got to the point, so there you go with that. Now if you did find this guide helpful, or any of the other guides we make, please share them with your friends or anyone you play with, so they can get better at the game. The better everyone gets at the game, the more enriched the game itself will be for everyone else. Higher level play is always fun to play, and that's really the goal of all these guides, is helping everyone get better. Now up next is going to be the warrior Hercules, and he's a very strong god in this game. He's capable of doing 4 roles. He can do solo, mid, jungle, and support. He can do all of those. The only thing he can't do is ADC, but people have still tried, I'm sure. There you go with that. But we're going to probably suggest him for solo lane. That's where he's probably the most comfortable and safest at. He does a very good job there, but there will be a lot of talk about counterplay and just thinking about what you should be doing with him as you're playing the solo lane. So that's it for the guide. I had fun. Hope you had fun watching and listening, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? Having fun. Thanks for coming by, and see you next time.